Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
I know you said the events this week reminded you of 1962. You're 12 years old, trying to integrate a pool in Baltimore.
That's right, George. We were trying to integrate a Olympic-sized pool near my house, and we had been constrained to a wading pool in the black community. We tried to integrate it, and as we did march towards that pool over a course of 6 days, I was beaten and all kinds of rocks and bottles thrown at me. And the interesting thing is that I heard the same kind of chants. Go home. You don't belong here. And they called us the N-word over and over and over again. And George, I got to tell you that I'm not the only person of color who has had those kind of experiences. And what it does when Trump does these things, when the president does these things, it brings up the same feelings that I had over 50-some years ago. And it's very, very painful. It's extremely divisive. And I just don't think that this of the president of the United States of America, the leader of the entire world, we can do better than that. I don't care what anybody says. And I think our Republican friends have to stand up and say, not that just that it might be inappropriate. No, they got to go further than that and say, Mr. President, you're absolutely wrong.
You know, the president's doubling down. This morning, he has a new tweet out this morning taking on the squad, those 4 Democratic congresswomen. He says, quote, I don't believe the 4 congresswomen are capable of loving our country. They should apologize to America and Israel for the horrible, hateful things they have said. They are destroying the Democratic Party, but are weak and insecure people who can never destroy our great nation, not capable of loving our country.
I take issue with that. I know, keep in mind that Ms. Tlaib, Ms. Presley, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, they are on my committee. So I interact with them every day. And, of course, I interact a lot with Ms. Omar. These are folks and women who love their country. And they work very hard, and they want to move us towards that more perfect union that our founding fathers talked about. And so when you disagree with the president, suddenly you're a bad person. Our allegiance is not to the president. Our allegiance is to the Constitution of the United States of America and the American people. And I'm going to tell you, these are some of the most brilliant young people that I have met, and I am honored to serve with them.
The president is determined to make that squad the face of the Democratic Party right now. We've seen some pretty ugly politics this week, but are you worried that it might work for the president and his party?
No, I'm not worried at all, because I know that what it is doing too is for the people who want to see our democracy intact. Those people despise them, and for every person that was saying those kinds of chants and feel the way that the president feels, there are probably 2 or 3 for every one of them who feel just the opposite. George, no matter where I go, what I'm hearing over and over again is from my constituents is, please save our democracy. Please save our country. And you know something else they say, George? They say I'm scared. And I've never, in my total of 37 years in public service, ever heard a constituent say that they were scared of their leader.
Scared of their leader? Scared of the President of the United States?
of the President of the United States. That's exactly right.
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
And I've been in politics 37 years. Go ahead. What'd you say?
Do you believe President Trump is a racist?
I believe he is. Yes, no doubt about it. And I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I got to tell you, George, let me tell you, when I think about what he said to these young ladies who are merely trying to bring excellence to government and trying to make sure that generations yet unborn have an opportunity to experience a true democracy. When I hear those things, it takes me back, like I said, and I can still remember bleeding from my forehead when people were throwing bottles, and these were adults, throwing bottles and saying, "Go home, nigger," and it just, I can't. And again, the president has to set the tone. He needs to be a role model. I would say to the president right now, Mr. President, we want you to be a role model. We want somebody in that White House who our children can be proud of, who our children can emulate, who our children will look up to. And that is not the kind of example. I'm telling you, Mr. President, you and we, our nation is better than that.
It is Monday, the 22nd of July of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, because it's been one of those weekends. We're only left to take the remainder, slice and dice, and put it together in a gourmet concoction beyond compare. Indeed, it is Monday. Oh, not only did we have one of those weekends, we're going to have one of those weeks. Mueller does give his testimony in a hearing on Wednesday, so we're building up to that, and everything is being thrown against the wall to see if it will stick. They're even rehashing Al Franken again. Now remember, Al Franken got kicked out of the Senate because of the Access Hollywood tapes. Yeah. Coming so close on the heels of the Access Hollywood tapes makes one wonder now, doesn't it? They always accuse you of what they are doing. Remember Comet Pizza? Okay. Makes you kind of wonder about this Epstein guy. And what's up with Dershowitz? He's changing his story again. All right. I bet he didn't have his underwear on when he got those massages. I just bet. Of course, it's too early in the morning to be thinking and conjuring those images. And it's too early in the morning anywhere in the world to be conjuring those images. So I apologize. In some quarters, that could have been abuse. And it was totally unmotivated, and I did not mean it, okay? I'll own it. But I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry if it put you over the edge. It almost put me over the edge, and that's why I'm so apologetic right now. Why would I want to perpetuate anything like that on anyone else? I can't even stand it myself. Well, it was one of those weekends, as I stated. Local politics and small town, spats sure do get blown up out of proportion. Especially when the right wing, how shall we put it, good Germans have the loudest voice in town. At least on the town Facebook page. I was suspended temporarily over the weekend. I'm not quite sure what post. Well, I posted a recipe on a boozy milkshake. Maybe that was it. I doubt it. I suspect it might have been that I took to task a story about why Kate Brown, the governor of Oregon, should be recalled. Now, of course, we do know that there is a concerted effort across many states by the GOP to use these strategies of recall to nullify democracy. They can't win at the ballot box. And I got to tell you, they can't really win with the bullets. So they'll nullify democracy instead with any means necessary. If it means leaving the state to prevent a vote, which is, you would think, Voting is the bulwark of democracy. It's what makes democracy work. If you hate democracy, you don't vote. And then threaten law enforcement with not only bodily harm, but death if they come to escort you back to vote, which is your job as a representative. So that didn't work out so very well for the GOP. And what was this? It was about a cap and trade bill. They're willing to go to arms over a cap and trade bill. So now they want to recall the duly elected governor of Oregon, Democratic woman, by the way. We just had an election. But we're not the only state that they're doing this. Oh, and did I mention funding comes from a couple of Russian oligarchs? Just like the secessionist movement. Indeed. So I suspect, now I didn't get into that nuance because you can't tell brainwashed people they've been brainwashed. They just don't have the self-awareness. Evident by the confessions that they're willing to make in public. They just have no idea. They always reveal who they are. So I suspect that I took to task a woman's account of firefighters and law enforcement made to stand at attention when Kate Brown came to tour a fire zone last summer during our wildfires. They were to be made to stand at attention in order, saluting apparently. And she came off the helicopter in red high heels. I always love the little bits of detail that occurs, because it bolsters. It really does bolster the brainwashing. All right, let's be clear. So she came off there with high heels and then demanded law enforcement disarm themselves and then not carry guns while patrolling and protecting property in a fire zone. Now, I gotta say, something sounded a little off about that. Granted, I've never been a cop, but I have fought oil, gas, and wildfires. And I've never carried a firearm into a fire with a bunch of ammo? Come on. Now, the reason that everybody needs to be armed, apparently, during a fire was then also explained in this conjuring, this story. And so apparently everybody there, the residents of the area there, were so appalled that some residents left like a knife for, in the woods for the cops to be able to use, just in case. Well, why didn't they just leave them a gun? I mean, come on, a knife? Jesus, that's really going to help. Thanks for helping the cop who doesn't have a gun. Now, once again, why does everybody need to be armed during a wildfires? Because all of the animals who are trying to escape the flames, like what if a bear comes out of the flames and they want to eat you? I don't think a bear is going to want to eat you when they're trying to escape from being immolated. But it takes a certain specific kind of mindset that would want to slaughter a bunch of animals coming out of a fire. Now, I didn't mention that. What I did mention is that I did what's known as due diligence, and I tried to find a story of the Oregon governor, Kate Brown, telling law enforcement they could not carry arms while patrolling on duty in a fire zone. I couldn't find a news story. So then I checked all the police unions in the state. Not one said any. I couldn't find anything. I mean, if a police union rep doesn't whine about something, it never happened. Let's be clear. But apparently, that may have been enough for me to be suspended. Because I questioned the veracity of a QAnon supporter telling a story that was on South Park. Yeah, I was reminded by Ricky from up there in Canada, and just as a reminder, she has a show with Kelly on Saturday nights. She reminded me about that South Park episode where they had to kill all the animals coming out of the forest fire because they were running at them. There's animals running at us. Kill them. Sounded to me suspiciously like a 400-pound guy sitting on a sofa in Macedonia filling up a bunch of Trump voters' heads with BS. Now, I didn't mention that, but I suspect. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays? Well, at the top, that was Representative Elijah Cummings stating the obvious when asked if he thought Trump was a racist. Is. On the rest of the menu here, Trump has been quietly shutting down defense programs that protect Americans from terrorism. I keep telling everybody, property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power. Lara Trump complained that critics of Send Her Back are pushing a biased, racially charged narrative about her father-in-law's racist campaign strategy. And Mike Pence's nephew is an embedded section leader who orchestrates Trump rally chants. That's a nice way of saying he's a rat fucker in the great history and tradition of the GOP. After the break, we move to the chef's table where villagers and firefighters battle huge wind-driven wildfires in central Portugal. Yeah, climate change. It's a hoax. And New Zealanders handed over 10,000 plus guns and weapons parts in the first week of the nation's buyback policy after the Christchurch massacre. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Well, we will see how long I remain on the Rogue River, Oregon Facebook page after giving information about the audio reading of the Mueller report that Netroots Radio has been broadcasting. I've offered it to them in MP3 format to those interested. Now, of course, only the right wing gets and is allowed to, post petitions to nullify democracy. Those of us who want to save it, I guess we'll have to start our own Facebook page now, won't we? With that said, if you would please take a look at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right-ish is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left-ish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice our Patreon link. And if you could please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that recurring contribution allows us to continue resisting as the founders originally intended so very, very long ago, even before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And thank you for your generosity and, I kid you not, patriotism, because it takes a true patriot to, well, fund the good. Thank you. Is this pandering? I guess so, but all kidding aside, we would be unable to do this without you, and your generosity is greatly, greatly appreciated. Please follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thank you, Tom. I take care of at Justice Putnam. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. And then scramble to get that link out on social media during the period of time that's known in the profession as the scramble period. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeart, YouTube, and wherever podcasts can be found. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays, is Out of Share Blue Media by Mike Stankiewicz. The Trump administration quietly canceled several important national security programs, which were created after 9/11 to help protect Americans from weapons of mass destruction. More than 30 current and former Department of Homeland Security employees said they did not know why the Trump administration stopped the programs. We don't know either. Are there any transcripts yet available with the secret meetings with Vlad? How about the translator's notes? Are those available yet? Inquiring minds would like to know. The employees warned the cuts could hinder the agency's ability to respond to a nuke attack. And in this reporter's opinion, that's a feature, not a bug. The programs cut over the past 2 years include training exercises for dealing with weapons of mass destruction at the state and local level. Another initiative that worked with foreign governments to prevent the smuggling of nuclear materials was also abandoned. Well, I don't know, if you're an oligarch in Russia and you got your hand on a bunch of nukes, you don't want to just put them in a cellar somewhere. You need to move them. The cuts were made without a thorough review of the potential risks to national security. Because all those liberals do is just hinder you with regulations. Additionally, more than 100 scientists and nuke experts have been reassigned or have left the Department of Homeland Security, hurting the agency's ability to protect Americans. Once again, a feature, not a bug. The real thing could happen tomorrow with no warning, one former official told the LA Times, and the only practice our defenders are going to have is through these red team studies and actual exercises. That activity is necessary to ensure even basic competence. The cuts are counter to what the Trump administration promised to do in a national security strategy report published in December of 2017. But when have you ever known this president to ever tell the truth? When? Trump officials promised to augment measures to secure, eliminate, and prevent the spread of WMD and related materials, according to the report. The administration also said it would make sure it retained the technology and knowledge to reduce the chance that weapons of mass destruction would fall into the hands of hostile characters like Antifa. They're going to keep Antifa from getting nuke materials, but Russian oligarchs need to move theirs, and, hey, highest bidder. If it's not Turkey, it'll be someone now, won't it? The Trump administration has a track record of making questionable national security decisions, and I wonder why, given the fact that we still don't have transcripts of Trump's meeting with Vlad, or even the translator's notes. Matthew Rosa of Salon brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Lara Trump, the wife of Trump's son Eric, has accused CNN anchor Anderson Cooper of pushing a, quote, biased, racially charged narrative, end quote, after he criticized her recent defense of the administration over the send her back scandal. Anyone insinuating that there was some premeditated plan to orchestrate the send her back chant is obviously desperate to continue pushing a biased, racially charged narrative. Fake news, Trump posted to her Twitter account on Saturday. That would be Lara Trump. She included a link to the Washington Examiner. Oh, yeah. A right-wing leaning newspaper, which happens to be the old... that was the Washington Times. I'm sorry. I was going to say it was the Mooney paper. The Times was the Mooney paper. The Examiner is just one of those virulent right-wing, Cumulus, Sinclair broadcasting type of outlets, which included a quote from Cooper blasting Trump for supposedly lying about her role in whipping up a crowd to chant "Send her back" about Representative Ilhan Omar. Now, previously, Cooper had shown a clip of Lara Trump telling a crowd, "If you don't love our country, the president said it, you can leave, right?" This was right after she told Fox Business Network that it wasn't the whole crowd. It was just a couple of people right there in front. She also insisted that the crowd began its chants against Omar without any prompting. Oh, really? Lara Trump has been an outspoken supporter of her father-in-law's administration, most recently writing an editorial for Breitbart claiming that Trump has helped women. She argued that there was a clear difference between the Democrat Party and President Donald Trump. Democrats promise to improve the lives of women, but Trump actually does it. Well, I don't know, improving your life by getting payoffs to keep quiet? Does he do that to all the women in America? Is it working? Final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes out of Raw Story by the great Sarah K. Burris. Well, it looks like Omarosa has revealed that, to Reverend Al Sharpton, by the way, that Trump has section leaders of each rally that helps urge the audience to chant and even leads them in chants. And one of these so-called section leaders is Mike Pence's nephew, John Pence. And then she goes on to describe her attendance at these rallies in a professional capacity, by the way. There are many section leaders embedded in the rally crowd themselves, and John Pence is tasked with choreographing these chants as a staged affair. Now, let's be clear. We don't hear the stories about Trump paying his crowd to show up. But every rally, if you're in the biz, there is a cattle call. They don't tell you what it is, but there is a cattle call for local acting talent to get paid. I don't know if it's union wages. I should look into that. But he has been known to pump up his crowds, with paid actors. So I suppose if you're going to have, an audience at the game show, you got to get the audience primed, and John Pence is one of those. And so it was a little too cute by half, as the cliche goes, when the chant arose of "Send her back," almost spontaneously. And then Trump leaned back, jutted out his Mussolini jaw, taking it in. Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. And I got to tell you, count 13 seconds. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011, 1013. That's an eternity. In radio, when you're standing at a podium, 13 seconds while the crowd is cheering. The gaslighting begins on this particular event, as all events from here on out will be gaslit, to tell his base what they need to hear to keep them into a frothing fury, and to, well, what does it do to us? We hesitate, and then we argue among ourselves about whether it's right to call this guy a racist or not. All right, that brings us to our break period, and we better get to our break. And when we come back, we're going to go through weather from around the world and then finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, Horror in the Light. In 1993, an episode entitled Home on the X-Files, a show not afraid to venture into horror, was pulled due to its disturbing and visceral nature. Transfer that level of shocking from the dark recesses of a rural pre-20th century American house to bucolic Scandinavia at the summer solstice, and you have an idea of what you're in store for with the film Midsummer. That and the fact that it's from director Ari Aster, who brought us 2018's Hereditary. The story begins with college student Danny Arter deciding, after a family trauma, to accompany her less-than-supportive boyfriend Christian to a once-every-90-year festival in Sweden. He's doing graduate work in anthropology, and with others is invited by a fellow student, Pele, who's from the ancestral commune of a group known as the Harga. Calling them a cult doesn't quite capture it. Dressed in white and with flowered headbands, they indulge in a not always coherent hodgepodge of animistic activity involving dancing, drugs, and fertility rituals, as well as animal and human sacrifice. The festivities form the backdrop for the drama playing out among the visitors, especially the deteriorating relationship between Danny and Christian. Aster's direction is unconventional. A sweeping vertical orbital shot of the visitors driving in telegraphs that you're indeed going somewhere upside down. There's little star power here. You may recognize the Maze Runner's Will Poulter, but it's up-and-coming British actress Florence Pugh who skillfully takes the Danny character from confused victim to a sort of sinister kingpin. It's unlikely you've seen a film like Midsummer before. It gets that with horror in broad daylight, there truly is no place to hide. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. The Apollo missions brought back 842 pounds of rock and soil from the moon, nearly 2,200 different samples. But there's one sample that planetary scientist Meenakshi Wadhwa says is the most interesting of all.
Apollo 10085.
Neil Armstrong collected it on Apollo 11.
He was about to step back into the lunar module, and he turned around and he had this rock box, and he saw little spaces, in there, and he knew that these geologists on Earth would be just so excited to study these materials. He just scooped up, I think, 9 scoops of soil that he put into the box.
And it became one of the most well-studied samples of the Apollo missions, she says. A geologist named John Wood at the Smithsonian noticed white flecks of rock in the soil, which he identified as a rock type called a northosite, and it clued him into the moon's ancient past.
And this was, it's quite a leap of imagination, but he proposed that the whole of the moon had at one time in the past, somewhere close to 4.5 billion years ago, been almost covered with a global magma ocean, ocean of lava. And so this was a revolutionary idea at the time because people had thought that the moon had formed cold. And so it completely changed our idea about how the moon formed, how the terrestrial planets form, like the Earth as well. It really changed a lot about our understanding of, planetary science.
But Wadwa has a second and more personal reason to appreciate this sample.
I met my husband because of this rock. My husband is Scott Parazynski. He was with NASA as an astronaut for 17 years, from 1992 to 2009. And after his retirement from NASA, he's a mountaineer as well, and he had always aspired to climb Mount Everest.
Scott's boyhood heroes were Neil Armstrong and the climber Edmund Hillary, who made the first confirmed ascent of Everest with his partner Tenzing Norgay.
In honor of them, he wanted to take a moon rock from Apollo 11 to the top of Everest and to bring back an Everest summit rock.
At the time, Wadwa was the chair of the NASA committee that grants access to the samples for scientific purposes. But this request, she says, was definitely out of the ordinary.
I just remember it because it was a really funny discussion in the committee room, hey, what happens if that moon rock falls down a crevasse, and not that, hey, Scott would be going down with that moon rock, of course.
But Scott made it to the top. Wadwa never met him and moved on from the Lunar Sample Committee. But then, a year or two later, she saw a friend's suggestion pop up on Facebook. You might know Scott Parazynski.
And I reached out to him and said, hey, how did your expedition go? And did you return the moon rock to NASA? And he sent me this note back saying, well, actually, I didn't send the moon rock back to NASA. I actually sent it to the International Space Station along with an Everest summit rock. And if you ever happen to be in Houston, I would love to meet you and thank you for making that possible. And so I happened to meet him, and that was it. That's how we met.
And so Neil Armstrong's last-minute scoop of moon dust brought two people together here on Earth and upturned our understanding of how the moon and the Earth itself got here. There's something in there about one small scoop for a man.
Yeah, a magma ocean for mankind. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One small scoop for man, a magma ocean for mankind.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Pools, water parks, and other recreational water venues are popular places to relax and stay cool, but they can be sources of serious illness. Since 2000, nearly 500 outbreaks have been reported at recreational water venues in the U.S., resulting in over 27,000 illnesses and 8 deaths. Most were caused by parasites, bacteria, viruses, or certain chemicals in the water. Parents with young children who have diarrhea should not allow their children to swim or play in the water. In addition, bathers should check the inspection scores of pools and water parks and can conduct mini-inspections using test strips before getting in the water. A few simple precautions can allow you to share the fun, not the germs. Thank you for joining us on A Minute of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
But Mom!
Don't but Mom me. You heard what the doctor said.
I'm fine. I just got my bell rung. It's not like I blacked out.
You've had headaches, dizzy spells, and you're just not yourself. That's not feeling fine.
Come on, I can't miss the game.
It's still serious, even if you didn't black out. It's better to miss one game than the whole season.
All concussions are serious. Know the warning signs and never let your child return to play before a healthcare professional says it's okay. A message from CDC.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Let's celebrate Megan Rapinoe.
I'm Lily Ledbetter, and this is a Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
Celebrate her and the entire United States women's soccer team's victory at the World Cup. But also let us mourn. No, that's the wrong word. Let us vow to remedy the cloud of inequality that enshrouds women's soccer. On March 28th, the national team members sued the United States Soccer Federation for paying women athletes far less than men, for providing inferior playing conditions, and for not promoting the sport. As Lindsay Krause, senior editor for OpDocs, recently wrote in the New York Times, quote, "Money makes money. Women can play and win all they want, but the system is created by men for men." She goes on to say, quote, "We pay for what we value. And if we invest in women's soccer as though there won't be an audience, we'll make that come true." Which, of course, is the answer to the argument, well, men's sports make more money, which is how it is, but not how it has to be. This is a fight that will play out in court, and it is also a fight that can be assisted greatly, if not won, in the court of public opinion. We're talking about equal pay for equal work. It's a simple concept, and if not now, when?
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1887. That was the day brewery workers in San Francisco declared victory after brewery owners gave in to their demands. The demands were as follows: free beer, a closed shop, freedom to live outside the breweries, a 10-hour workday, a 6-day work week, and a board of arbitration. Brewery workers in that city maintained their union loyalty. During the 2 years that followed, the National Brewers Association sought to break the brewers' unions across the nation. But the brewers stood strong in San Francisco. The Brewery Owners Association ordered its affiliated members in San Francisco to fire union workers and replace them with scabs. This led to a 9-month brewer workers strike. The strike was successful. The National Brewers Association finally was forced to capitulate. There have been other more recent brewery strikes, and not just in the United States. In 2010, Carlsberg brewery workers went on strike in Denmark after bosses told the staff they could only drink at lunchtime. The warehouse and production workers in Denmark were rebelling against the company's new alcohol policy. Previously, workers could help themselves to beer throughout the day from coolers placed around the work sites. According to a company spokesman, the only restriction was that you could not be drunk at work, which was up to each and every one to be responsible. On July 9th, 2015, Polar brewery workers went on strike in Venezuela because the company delayed signing a contract and refused to recognize the union. The 4 Polar breweries make 80% of Venezuela's beer. There's no shortage of beer in that country. Venezuela is one of the 10 largest consumers of beer in the world. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labor.
This is a Radio Labor report recorded on Monday, July 22nd, 2019. I'm Mark Boulanger. The labor movement's largest global union federation is holding its Congress in Bangkok this week. Education International represents more than 32 million workers who are members of about 400 unions in 172 countries. The Congress was preceded by a number of workshops, including a series on women and labor unions. A speaker at one of the workshops related to women workers was Mary Boosted. Ms. Boosted is the Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union in the UK.
I was really interested in what you were saying about leadership and women's leadership in politics and in unions. And just to say that one of the things that we're doing in the NEU is developing policy on ethical leadership, which is focused on how do you lead institutions, how do you lead schools and colleges at a time of austerity, when budgets are being cut, and when the urge is to let finance take over and to forget that you are leading people and you're leading institutions with values, with ethics, and that you have to live those, both in the way that you lead, in the policies that you pursue, and how you treat your staff and how do you treat the people you work with. And remembering that if you don't treat your colleagues well, they can't treat the children well either. That negative culture passes down. The other thing that we're looking at in the NEU is how do we treat women in the union. We have to remember that the biggest inequality is that women, the majority of the population, do not earn the same as men, do not have the same rights as men, and live lives too often which are circumscribed and constrained by gendered expectations on girls and on women, who do better in learning and exams but do worse in terms of earnings and job security and the right to healthcare, etc. So we are looking at all those things in the NEU. And the thing I would finish with is that the policies are fine, but working it through in practice is really hard, because it's about the day-to-day interactions that you have with the expectations that people have at every level in every institution. And that's why the fight for feminism, if you are a woman leader, being a feminist is the most important thing. Not saying, I'm not a feminist, but saying, I am a feminist and.
Another speaker at a workshop focused on issues related to women workers was Rebecca Abadu Okran, who is with the National Association of Graduate Teachers in Ghana.
Our union leadership should come to terms with the fact that women are key components of unions, and as such, conscious efforts should be made to ensure that we are well represented at all levels of union structure. In view of this, we are proposing that there should be a rethink of union activities and when they are carried out. In our context as Africans, and I'm sure a lot more women here will associate with the fact that the responsibility society and nature places on us makes it impossible, it makes it difficult, if not impossible, for us to attend, for example, meetings at certain times of the day. And these are things that unions can really work out and make sure that women are well represented in meetings by having meetings at the appropriate time and convenient times for women to come on board. Also, unions' activities should include issues that are of interest to women, especially issues on health. In my union, NAGRAT, and of course unions in Ghana, women's health issues are at the core of the establishment of health funds that are helping women to treat and to address issues of cancers, and mostly breast cancer.
Radio Labor will be reporting directly from Education International's Congress until it ends Friday, July 26th. And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, weather from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is already 64 degrees Fahrenheit, slated for a high of 93 to 95. Winds are currently light and variable out of the southeast. Will be shifting out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour, as it has been doing over the weekend at least. Shifting tonight out of the northwest, continuing at 5 to 10 miles per hour, then back out of the west-northwest tomorrow. Fair conditions with a couple of lingering clouds are current, but we will be clear for the rest of the day and tonight. Overnight lows in the low to mid-60s. Tomorrow we should have a high in the mid to upper 80s, with overnight lows in the low 50s, low 60s, maybe upper 50s. We can only hope. Grass pollen remains high. The air quality index locally is at 21 parts per million. And the daytime UV index is very high, though it has come down to 8, which is, the angle of the sun, because it had been 9 for a considerable time. All right. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.79 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at already 52%. We're going to be a bit dry. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 82 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 92 and sunny with a heat advisory, and that's pretty much across all of France. Good thing the tour is taking a rest today. Rome is 95 and sunny with a heat advisory as well. Kiev is 76 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 87 and fair. Hong Kong is 81 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 75 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 58 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy with a wind advisory. And New York is 86 degrees Fahrenheit and fair, though you have a heat advisory for later on in the day, so stay cool, New York. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. Blazes in central Portugal reached houses on Sunday, forcing locals to take matters into their own hands as they tried to protect their homes from huge wildfires with only buckets of water and hose pipes as strong winds fanned the flames. One of the wildfires, which broke out on Saturday at Castelo Branco, a district 139 miles east of Lisbon, is still burning, having spread to nearby Santarém district and threatened several villages in the Vila de Rei and Macau municipalities. Portugal Civil Protection said some houses were destroyed by the flames, but did not give a specific number. Around 870 firefighters are on the ground. The wildfire was easing as the wind loses strength and temperatures drop during the night. Authorities have evacuated villages and fluvial beaches as a precaution, and 30 people have been injured.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Alison Beveridge of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. New Zealanders have handed over more than 10,000 guns, weapon parts, and accessories in the first week of a buyback policy prompted by the country's worst peacetime mass shooting, police figures released yesterday's Sunday show. A gun reform law passed in April banned most semi-automatic firearms, parts that convert firearms into semi-automatics, magazines over a certain capacity, and some shotguns. Owners have until December 20th to hand in their weapons, and the government has set aside about $143 million to compensate them for up to 95% of the original cost. More than 2,000 people have surrendered 3,275 firearms, 7,827 parts and accessories, and in return, authorities have paid them slightly more than $4.06 million since the buyback began last Saturday. The police spokesman told Reuters by telephone. Police said they were pleased with the turnout on Sunday, as 684 people handed in 1,061 guns and 3,397 parts and accessories at events across the country. I'll get it out. Media reported that Christchurch residents were upset about the proposed opening of a Gun City megastore in the city. Brenton Tarrant, accused of the March 15 killings, bought 4 weapons and ammunition from the Gun City chain online. Tarrant, due to stand trial in May, has pleaded not guilty to 92 charges over the attacks, including New Zealand's first terrorism charge. With a population of just under 5 million and an estimated total of 1.5 million firearms, New Zealand ranks 17th in the world in terms of civilian ownership, the Small Arms Survey shows. Well, I wanted to, before we leave here, I wanted to send out my condolences to the family of Paul Krasner. I met Paul Krasner back in the late 80s and went to a few soirees, parties, events, readings, performances, whatnot, where he was either performing alone or I was part of the performance. Even had dinner with him in Muir Beach with an old girlfriend who was dear friends with Paul Krasner. Quite an iconoclast, a big passing of a great American mind. Rest in peace. All right, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Terrytown Chowder Tuesdays, so stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. près du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver, dans mon jardin d'hiver.